Chapter 175, The Sole Target, 3. Behind them, Chu Zhimiao, Pei Yijun, and Han Jai held another section of the wall, while the Eagle team split into two groups to defend the remaining sides. As for the rest of the ability users, they stared at the endless swarm of zombies with pale faces and didn't dare move. Standing in the middle of the survivors, Sister Wei clenched the iron rod in her hand and said, "Zyro Jiu, I'm going out to fight." Zyro Jiu's eyes widened when she heard her words and said, "Sister Wei, it's dangerous outside. If you go out now, you will die." Sister Wei looked at her and replied, "If I do nothing, I can only wait for death. But if I go out and fight, at least I will be fighting for a chance to survive. I don't want to die with regrets." Sister Zyro Jiu was choked by her words. Sister Wei patted her shoulder and said, "You are still young and don't have any ability power, so stay here." After finishing her words, she pushed through the people in front of her and walked to the door. Seeing her approach, a soldier standing guard said, "Where are you going? Stay inside and don't cause trouble." "Comrade, I want to go out and fight," Sister Wei said firmly. The soldiers looked at her for a moment, then finally opened the door to let her through. As soon as she stepped outside, she finally saw the situation clearly. Looking at the number of zombies surrounding them, it would have been a lie to say she wasn't scared, but fear wouldn't save her life. So she gritted her teeth and joined the soldiers defending one of the walls. Not long after, a group of people walked out from the crowd of survivors and joined the battle. When Sister Wei saw Zyro Jiu and Wang Jai, she was taken aback. "Why did the two of you come out?" she asked. "Sister Wei, we are a team. Of course, we should fight side by side," Wang Jai replied with a smile. "Sister Wei, even if we have to die, we don't want to die without a fight," Zyro Jiu added. "Since you have made up your mind, then kill as many zombies as you can. But don't push yourselves too hard," Sister Wei said. "Okay." At the same time, near the entrance, He Yupeng and Lin Fei joined the fight. Door crack. Wielding an iron rod, He Yupeng swung it with brute force, the muscles on his arms bulging as he attacked the zombies. His attacks were rough but effective. One strike smashed half of a zombie's head. Black blood and rotting flesh splattered everywhere, some splashed on his clothes. Seeing this, Lin Fei instinctively took several steps back to avoid the smelly blood. He didn't have a spare set of clothes, and if he got dirty with black blood or rotten bits, he would have to go naked just to wash them. Roar! As a distant roar echoed, the zombies attacking the gate grew agitated. They began banging on the gate, pushing harder and harder to break through the fragile defenses. Bangs, bangs, bang! While Li Yang and He Yupeng continued brawling with the zombies, Lin Fei scanned the area. He bent his knees, then lightly pushed off the ground and leaped onto the top of an oil pump. From higher ground, he spotted a zombie at the back of the horde. Strangely, it didn't seem agitated like the rest. Narrowing his eyes, Lin Fei had a hunch that this one might be the one controlling the others. Trusting his instincts, he took a stone from his pocket and threw it at the zombie. Whoosh crack! The stone flew fast, aimed straight for the zombie's head, but just before it hit the target, a rotten palm intercepted it. The zombie glanced at the hole in its hand, then turned to glare in Lin Fei's direction. It didn't feel pain, but it clearly wasn't happy about the additional hole in its palm. Roar! It let out a furious roar and leaped toward the gas station. Seeing it coming, Lin Fei's eyes widened with surprise as he cursed, "Shit." He jumped down from the oil pump and hid behind Pei Yijun. Spotting the incoming zombie, Pei Yijun thought it was targeting him. He immediately raised his hand and created a lightning net. Crack zap! The moment the net appeared, the zombie sensed danger, but with the momentum of its speed, it couldn't stop in time and crashed straight into the lightning net. Roar! The zombie roared as its body stiffened under the electric current. Pei Yijun didn't give it time to recover and clasped his hands together, tightening the lightning net. As the net shrinks in size, the zombie's body is both cut and roasted by the lightning. Seeing that the zombie couldn't move, Lin Fei quickly threw several more stones at it from behind Pei Yijun. Crack, 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 crash! Imbued with his wind energy, the stones were faster and sharper than normal. As they repeatedly hit the same spot, they managed to shatter the zombie's shoulder. Black blood splattered onto the ground as the rotten arm fell to the ground with a thud. Roar! Furious, the zombie grabbed the lightning net with its remaining arm and pulled it hard, breaking it apart. Cough! Aitg coughed up a mouthful of blood from the backlash. Clutching his chest, he gritted his teeth as he stared at the zombie. The gap in their strength was far too great. He couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. While Aitg was still trying to figure out how to deal with the zombie, Lin Fei had already bolted toward the wall. Since he couldn't win, the only logical choice was to run for his life. The moment the zombie noticed his escape attempt, it roared again, raw, and leapt over the wall to chase after him. The second the roar rang out, the zombies attacking the entrance abruptly stopped. Chapter 176, The Sole Target, 4. As if following a command, the zombies turned and rushed in the direction the special zombie had gone. Lin Fei glanced over his shoulder, and his scalp went numb when he saw the entire horde chasing him. "What the fuck, why are you chasing me? I have got no meat on my body and my brain is small. Go eat the big guys at the gas station, he shouted while running for his life. Thanks to his unintended distraction, the number of zombies at the gas station dropped dramatically. Wei Wying looked toward where Lin Fei had lured the zombies away, and said with admiration and sadness in his eyes, "What a brave man." Then he turned to his team and said, "We can't let him sacrifice himself in vain. Everyone, hold the line and kill as many as you can." "Yes, Captain," the soldiers responded in unison. Thinking of the young man risking his life to buy them a chance at survival, everyone's blood boiled. Their morale soared and they no longer felt that there was no hope. At that moment, another group of survivors come out from the building to join the fight, led by Sister Zhao and the women who had been saved by Zhao Lijai. They were ordinary people, and it was natural for them to feel fear. The fact that they could still gather the courage to step forward and fight was already far more admirable than the men who were hiding inside the building. While the Eagle team and the survivors breathed a sigh of relief after surviving the ordeal, Lin Fei cursed the 18 generations of the zombie chasing after him. He had been running for almost an hour and had managed to shake off the horde, but the big guy refused to give up and was still hot on his heels. Even with his current stamina, it was impossible to keep running forever. Unlike zombies, he felt fatigue, so he needed rest. Just when he thought he was about to die and become a zombie's food, he spotted a man and woman not far ahead. Since he couldn't take down the zombie alone, he figured it was time to drag someone else into this mess. They might hate him for it later, but he didn't have time to care about it now. He needed to stay alive first so they could hate him later. After he made up his mind, he bent his knees and took a sharp turn. Boom! The zombie was unable to stop in time and slammed straight into a building. The wall cracked, and part of the structure collapsed due to the collision. Roar! The zombie roared in fury, frustrated at having lost sight of its prey again. Climbing out of the rubble, it resumed the chase. Hearing the sound behind him, Lin Fei glanced back and nearly cursed aloud. The zombie was completely unharmed, even after crashing through a 2-story building. Seeing that, Lin Fei picked up the pace and shouted, "Brother, please help me." Jian Huan and Jian Zikin turned toward the voice. When they saw a young man being chased by a zombie, their expressions darkened instantly. They both drew their daggers, and with a flick of his arm, Jian Zikin summoned a shadow clone wielding an identical weapon. Just before crashing into them, Lin Fei twisted his body and slashed his hand through the air. In a split second, a small wind blade shot out at high speed toward the zombie. Whoosh slash! The zombie hadn't expected that he would have this trick. It tried to dodge, but the wind blade still cut deep into its shoulder, and black blood flowed out from the wound. Raw! Now truly enraged, the zombie spotted Jian Huan and Jian Zikin and assumed they were allies of its prey. Raising one arm, a fireball materialized above its palm. With a swing, it throws the fireball at them. "Sister, dodge!" Jian Zikin shouted. Jian Huan leapt to the side without hesitation, thinking that her brother would do the same, but when she looked up, she saw him still standing there. Her eyes widened in panic, and she shouted, "Zikin!" Clenching his jaw, Jian Zikin raised his hand, and shadows surged from his feet, forming a shield that blocked the fireball. Boom! The explosion sent a wave of energy spreading through the area, kicking up dust and debris. Before the smoke settled, Jian Zikin shot forward from the cloud of dust and swung his dagger straight at the zombie's head. Clang! The blade was blocked by the zombie's sharp claws. Its grey, soulless eyes stared back at him with a chilling, murderous intent. Raw! The zombie opened its mouth. Fire began to gather inside. Seeing this, Giant Zikin narrowed his eyes and launched a powerful kick aimed at the zombie's neck. Duag. Although the kick hit the neck, it didn't cause any damage at all. The zombie didn't even flinch and watched him as if he was a dying prey. Not far from them, Lin Fei was sitting on the ground, gasping for breath. He watched the scene in front of him with guilt and fear. If that zombie spat out the fireball from its mouth, the young man would surely die. Gritting his teeth, Lin Fei forced himself to stand and grabbed a handful of stones. He throws them toward the zombie, one after another. The zombie had suffered from his stone throwing and learned its lesson. When it saw the incoming stones, it leapt into the air, easily dodging them. Stab, crack. It thought it would finally get its meal, but before it could spit out the fire from its mouth, a black dagger pierced its skull from behind. The blade sliced clean through its head as it landed on the ground. Thud! The zombie falls to the ground with its head split open. Giant Zikin flipped midair and landed safely beside the body. He glanced down at the corpse, then at the shadow clone standing nearby. Chapter 177, A Deal 1. The shadow clone walked toward the corpse, stirred the zombie's brain, retrieved a small transparent crystal about the size of a thumbnail, and handed it to Giant Zikin before merging with the shadow beneath his feet. Seeing that the zombie was finally killed, Lin Fei finally let out a breath of relief and slumped to the ground. At this point, he didn't care how dirty his clothes were. He just wanted to lie there and take a break. Just after he pocketed the crystal core, his arm was pulled by his sister. Giant Huan checked her brother from head to toe and let out a sigh of relief when she found no wounds on his body. She glared at him and said, Giant Zikin, what do you think you were doing just now? Are you tired of living and looking for death? Noticing the worry and anger in his sister's eyes, Giant Zikin didn't dare to reply and lowered his head. Whenever he used this trick, he would be able to brush off his sister's anger and scolding. Unfortunately, it was no use this time. Giant Huan was angry because of her worry. In this world, her brother was the only family she had. As for those relatives, she never counted them as family. What kind of family would sell their daughter to an old man? Sister, I'm sorry. Next time I will be more careful, Giant Zikin admitted softly. Hearing this, Giant Huan widened her eyes and asked, You still want there to be a next time? Although both of them knew it was impossible to stay safe in their current situation, and that they would have to face dangerous times, Giant Huan was still unwilling to see her brother act so recklessly. Sister, I'm sorry. Since her brother had already apologized, Giant Huan also stopped scolding him. Now that the worry and fear in her heart had settled, she turned and glared at the person who caused this situation. She walked toward Lin Fei, who was lying on the ground in large strides. When she was 2 steps away from him, she asked, Who are you? Why did you lure the zombie toward us? When he heard this, Lin Fei turned to look at her and noticed the wariness, anger, and murderous intent in the woman's eyes. After a short break, he felt much better. Pushing himself up, he sat on the ground and replied helplessly, Sister, I'm sorry for pulling you and your friend into this situation, but I really had no intention of harming either of you. Hearing his words, Giant Huan didn't believe him at all. If he had no intention of involving them, why did he come their way? Seeing her disbelief, Lin Fei stood up and said, Sister, I'm grateful for your help, but this zombie has been chasing me for hours. I really didn't have the energy left to run or lead it in another direction. Before Giant Huan could ask, Giant Zikin walked over and asked, Brother, why was this zombie chasing you? Lin Fei also wanted to know the answer, but had no one to ask. He could only shake his head and reply, I have no idea either. He knew that if he didn't explain, these two would never let him stay with them. So he continued, At dawn, a group of zombies suddenly surrounded the gas station where I and the rest of the survivors were staying. The soldiers who came with us had no way to kill them all, so some ability users, including me, decided to help. Since I'm not good with close combat, I decided to throw stones at the zombies. Why did you throw stones? Can you even deal any damage with that? Giant Huan asked. Hearing this, Lin Fei bent down and picked up a stone. Then, he threw it toward a roadblock. Crack! The moment the stone hit the roadblock, it shattered instantly. Seeing this, both Giant Huan and Giant Zikin were stunned. The way they looked at him changed instantly. Sister, brother, to be honest, my ability is kind of useless. I awakened a speed-type ability. Except for luring away zombies or escaping, my ability has no use at all in battle, he added with a sigh. When they heard this, the giant siblings looked at each other. Although speed-type abilities were limited, as long as he had awakened an ability, his 5 senses, strength, and stamina would have increased. He could still kill zombies more easily than ordinary people. "What happened to the people in the gas station after you left?" Jian Huan asked. Lin Fei shook his head, pointed at the zombie's corpse not far from them, and replied, "I don't know, but most of the zombies followed that one and chased after me. Fortunately, I was able to shake off the rest. Only this one was so stubborn and kept chasing me." After they heard his words, Jian Zikin pulled his sister a few meters away from Lin Fei and said, "Sister, how about we let him stay with us? It's hard for the two of us to travel to Jiangning City, but if he joins us, he could help us in emergencies." "Zikin, even if he can help us, his ability is speed. It's better not to trust him too much," Jian Huan said with a frown. Jian Zikin glanced at Lin Fei and explained in a low voice, "Sister, even if he can't kill the zombies, he can lure them away. With his speed, he will be able to lead them away and shake them off before rejoining us." When she heard this, Jian Huan looked at her brother with wide eyes and asked with a hint of anger, "Zikin, are you planning to use him as bait? Don't you know how dangerous that is? Both of us were used as bait by those people, and you know it yourself, the helpless and devastating feeling. How can you do the same thing as them and treat a human's life so lightly?" she added. Chapter 178, A Deal 2. "Sister, we will ask him, and if he refuses, we won't force him. It will just be a deal between us," Jian Zikin quickly explained when he saw that his sister misunderstood him. Although Jian Huan was unhappy with her brother's suggestion, she knew they needed more people to ensure their safety. She also realized that kindness was a luxury in their current situation. After thinking for a while, she finally nodded and said, "You can ask him. If he is unwilling, you should let him go." "Sister, I understand. I won't cross the bottom line and turn into someone like them," Jian Zikin promised. After they reached an agreement, the Jian siblings walked back. Seeing them coming over, Lin Fei smiled but said nothing. When he had lured the zombie toward them, he wasn't only betting on them helping him kill it, he also wanted to find people and join them. It's better to move in a small group, looking for supplies while killing zombies, than to go with the soldiers. There were too many rules and restrictions when he was with the Eagle team, and it hindered his plans to improve his ability. Jian Zikin smiled and asked, "Brother, do you have any plans after this?" Lin Fei sighed and replied, "I don't have any plans, I just want to find some supplies and survive." "You don't want to search for your family?" Jian Huan asked. "I'm an orphan, I only have myself," Lin Fei replied casually with a shrug. Hearing his casual reply, for a moment, she felt sorry for him. Knowing his sister would become soft-hearted, Jian Zikin quickly said, "Brother, do you want to join us? My sister and I plan to go to Jiangning City and join the survivor base there. If you come with us, we can split the supplies evenly." "Why do you suddenly want me to join your team?" Lin Fei asked with a guarded expression. "Brother, it will be safer to travel with more people. With your speed, you can lure away the zombies if we are trapped and return safely. In return, we will give you some supplies now if you join us. It's a win-win situation," Jian Zikin said. Lin Fei looked at them for a while before he said, "Let's say I join your team, and we get trapped by zombies. Wouldn't it be dangerous and unfair for me to be the one luring them away while you can survive unscathed? Brother, you have seen my ability and strength. I can ensure your safety on a daily basis. You would only need to lure the zombies in times of crisis," Jian Zikin replied calmly. After thinking for a moment, Lin Fei asked again, "Then how about we split the supplies and crystal cores?" Hearing this, Jian Zikin replied, "For supplies, we will split them evenly, everyone gets the same amount. As for crystal cores, whoever kills the zombie gets the core." Lin Fei looked at them and considered the pros and cons. After a long pause, he finally nodded and said, "Okay, but I want some food and water now. I'm hungry and thirsty." The moment he agreed, Jian Zikin opened his backpack and took out a pack of biscuits and a bottle of mineral water. He handed them to him and said, "Brother, now that we are a team, can you tell us your name and your age?" Lin Fei took the supplies and replied, "My name is Lin Fei. I'm 23 years old this year." "Brother Lin, my name is Jian Zikin. I'm a year younger than you. And this is my sister, Jian Huan. She is 2 years older than you." When he heard this, Lin Fei looked at Jian Huan and said in surprise, "I didn't expect that it's an older sister instead." "Even if I look like a young girl, I'm an adult," Jian Huan said with a frown. Because of her baby face, people often thought she was a university student, or even a high schooler. She hated it when people treated her like an immature brat. Noticing her displeasure, Lin Fei chuckled and said, "Sister, I didn't mean anything by it. It's just that you are beautiful and look so young. If someone didn't know, they might think you are Brother Jian's younger sister." When she heard his words, Jian Huan snorted but said nothing. She was still unhappy with him, even if he didn't mean to harm them. "Brother Lin, you can rest first. After you recover, we will continue our journey," Jian Zikin said. "Okay," Lin Fei nodded. After they found an abandoned small store, the Jian siblings went to check for supplies while Lin Fei rested and ate. When they went to the back room, the corner of his lips lifted. I should have become an actor, not a factory worker. What a waste of my acting talent," he thought inwardly. Meanwhile, at a small gas station in the opposite direction, Zhao Lijai and the Phantom team were getting ready to leave. Since they were no longer soldiers, they didn't use the armored vehicles and instead found several abandoned cars. While Zhang Yuan and the other members found a minivan and a few SUVs, Zhao Lijai brought out her SUT. She emptied the car so they could use it to carry supplies later. After driving the cars over, they filled the tanks, and the Wen brothers reinforced the vehicles with metal, greatly improving their defense. Once everything was ready, they set out to look for more supplies and clear out the zombies. As before, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan stayed behind while the team left first, so she could collect the underground fuel tank. When she was done, the two of them drove off and rejoined the team. Without communication devices in their vehicles, they couldn't talk while on the road. Fortunately, they all knew Morse code, so it wasn't a problem for them to relay messages. After checking the map, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, we are near a commercial district. How about we go check it out and see if we can get more satellite phones?" Chapter 179, New Crops 1. Meanwhile, at a small gas station in the opposite direction, Zhao Lijai and the Phantom team were getting ready to leave. Since they were no longer soldiers, they didn't use the armored vehicles and changed their clothes. Now they wear shirts, t-shirts and jeans instead of their military uniform. This way, no one would know that they were soldiers. As for the vehicles, they found several abandoned cars. While Zhang Yuan and the other members brought back 2 minivans and 4 SUVs, Zhao Lijai brought out her SUT from her space. She emptied the car so they could use it to carry supplies later. After driving the cars over, they filled the tanks and also filled the empty petrol cans they had found at the back of the gas station. Each large can held 30 liters and was placed in the minivans. As for the smaller cans, they can hold 10 liters and are loaded onto the SUVs and Zhao Lijai's SUT as backups. When they were done filling the tanks, the Wen brothers reinforced the vehicles with metal, greatly improving their defense. Once everything was ready, they set out to look for more supplies they lacked. As before, she and Jin Zuyan stayed behind while the team left first, allowing her to collect the underground fuel tank. When she was done, the two of them drove off and rejoined the team. Without communication devices in their vehicles, they couldn't talk while on the road. Fortunately, they all knew Morse code, so it wasn't a problem. After checking the map, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, we are near a commercial district. How about we go check it out and see if we can get more satellite phones?" When Jin Zuyan heard Zhao Lijai's words, he nodded and said, "Okay." Seeing how easily he agreed, Zhao Lijai couldn't help but ask, "Brother Yan, don't you have your own plan? Is it okay to agree to my suggestion like this?" Jin Zuyan chuckled and said, "I don't have any specific plan. For now, our team's main goal is to clear as many zombies as we can and collect supplies before the next rain." Thinking about the changes brought by the next rain in her previous life, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, there are several husbandries near this area. How about we go there first before heading to the commercial district?" Hearing this, Jin Zuyan glanced at her through the rearview mirror and asked, "Why does Aitg suddenly want to go there?" "I want to see if we can get some animals. It's hard to find meat now since there is no electricity and most of it has gone bad. If we can get animals, I can store them in my space," Zhao Lijai replied. "Well, although they will die when stored in your space, at least we will have meat to eat for a while," Jin Zuyan said after a moment. When she heard this, Zhao Lijai pointed at the map and said, "Brother Yan, it's 20 kilometers from here. We need to take the left road." "Okay." Afterward, Jin Zuyan used the car's headlights to send a message in Morse code. Up front, Qin Luzi and the rest received the message and took the road on the left. As soon as they left the main road, they had to slow down due to its poor condition. Besides zombies roaming about, the road was also blocked by abandoned cars. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan relayed a message with the car's headlights, and shortly after, they stopped their vehicles and got out. The moment they exited the cars, the zombies caught their scent and rushed over while roaring. Some were blocked by the cars, unable to climb over, while others managed to reach them. Roar! The zombies opened their mouths wide and let out a roar as they pounced. Pop, pop, pop. Seeing the approaching zombies, everyone pulled out their airguns from their holsters and fired. At such close range, each shot pierced the zombies' skulls and killed them instantly. When Zhang Yuan saw this, he nodded and said, "Fian's idea of using airguns is really good. They are effective in close combat and quieter than firearms." Nodding at his words, Qin Luzi added, "We also don't have to worry about running out of ammo with Wen Kai and Wen Mo around." Zhang Yuan and the others nodded and continued clearing out the zombies. At the same time, Zhou Huajian used his vines to drag the abandoned cars to the roadside. They were clearing the path to make it easier for survivors to escape in case of an emergency. Impressed by how effective the airguns were, Zhao Lijai moved closer to Jin Zuyan and said, "Brother Yan, I want a gun too." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan readily agreed. "Okay, I will ask Wenmo to make one for you later." "Thank you, Brother Yan, you are the best." Zhao Lijai praised him as she held his hand. She knew that he liked her to act like a love-brained girl with him and shower him with praises. Since he liked it, she would be generous and do it to make him happy. Not knowing what she was thinking, Jin Zuyan was over the moon when he saw her acting coquettishly with him and felt proud that he could make his girl happy. Thanks to the airguns, they easily dealt with the zombies. Afterward, Shen Jinj burned the corpses while Zyro Kai collected the crystal cores. As for the metal bullets they had used, Wenmo retrieved them with a wave of his hand. When he saw that the metal was stained with black blood and rotting matter, he sighed and said, "I thought we could reuse this metal, but it's been tainted with the zombie virus." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai's eyes lit up. She walked over and asked, "Brother Wen, how about I help you clean it with my water?" Although he didn't know whether water could remove the virus, Wenmo still nodded and said, "Okay." Chapter 180, New Crops 2. Zhao Lijai stepped forward and created a water ball. Using her body to block Wenmo's gaze, she secretly collected the metal ball into her space for a few seconds. Then she took it out and smiled when she saw the shiny surface of the metal ball. To cover up her sneaky move, she washed the metal with the water ball and said, "Brother Wen, it's done." Wenmo walked over and was surprised to see how clean the metal looked. He checked the metal ball and said, "Sister-in-law, you cleaned it really well. We can definitely reuse this." "I'm happy to help. If you need to clean more next time, just let me know," Zhao Lijai replied with a smile. "Okay." Once they were done clearing the road, they got back into their vehicles and drove toward the husbandry area. Sitting in the car, Zhao Lijai stared blankly out the window. Jin Zuyan noticed, but assumed she was just tired and let her be. Unbeknownst to him, Zhao Lijai was actually checking her space using her mind. Thanks to the team clearing out so many zombies, she could no longer keep track of how many crystal cores were stored in her space. Being frugal, she didn't want to use crystal cores to support her space if she could avoid it. Instead, she often collected items stained with black blood or zombie remains into her space, so the space could just absorb the energy. Thinking about her space's ability to absorb the zombie virus, she wondered if she could just put zombies into her space and let it absorb them like it did with Mo Bingxiu. If this method is feasible, then she could save energy to kill zombies, and at the same time, save crystal cores to support her own space. "Maybe I can try it later when we are clearing zombies again," she thought to herself. After checking the crystal cores, she turned to the granary. The amount of corn stored there was steadily increasing. However, there were no other crops. Since she had obtained seeds for other types of plants, she wanted to plant them. With that thought in mind, she checked her farmland, and was stunned by what she saw. The trees and bushes she had planted earlier had grown so fast that she doubted her eyes. The strawberry bushes were already bearing small fruits, while the trees had grown taller and begun to sprout flowers. She thought for a moment, and decided to move the trees to the grassland, then using the black soil to plant rice instead. As for the corn, she planned to replace it with wheat and potatoes to produce more flour. Opening the settings, she saw that she needed to wait 15 minutes before the corn was ready for harvest. While waiting, she moved the trees from the farmland and replanted them behind the house. By the time she was done, the corn was ready for harvest. After collecting the crops, she used 100 m2 of black soil to plant paddy, 50 m2 for wheat, and 50 m2 for potatoes. She then checked the oxygen level and noticed that it had increased by 10% after adding more crops. Just as she finished planting her farmland, she heard Jin Zuyan's voice, "Aitg, we are here." Hearing this, she withdrew her mind from her space and looked outside. The area was filled with zombies and animal bones scattered on the road. Judging from the scene, the chances of finding any living animals were very low. Before leaving, everyone checked their air guns and communicated using the car's headlights. As soon as they stepped out of the cars, several zombies rushed over. Raising their guns, the Phantom team members killed them in less than 10 seconds.
Top.
The metal bullets pierced the zombies' skulls and killed them instantly. While they took down the zombies, Shenjinj used his blue flame to burn the corpses, and Xirokai picked up the crystal cores. "Captain, there are people inside that warehouse," Qin Luzi said while pointing to the building not far from them. "How many people?" Jin Zuyan asked. 34 ordinary people and 6 ability users, Qin Luzi replied after a moment. Jin Zuyan thought for a second and said, "Since there are ability users there, we won't check on the survivors. Let's go inspect the pens." Understood. While the Phantom team walked toward the livestock pens, killing zombies along the way, Xirokai looked around the road and felt disappointed. They had killed so many zombies, but only found 3 crystal cores. The number of cores was far less compared to the zombies they killed in the factory districts. Inside the warehouse, a young man was watching them from a window. When he saw the team leaving, he quickly ran to the second floor and said, "Boss, those people just killed the zombies and left." Hearing this, a man rubbed his chin and said, "Interesting. There is a warehouse right in front of them, but they didn't even check it. Instead, they killed the zombies and left." After thinking for a moment, he looked at the young man and asked, "Are they soldiers?" The young man shook his head and replied, "They didn't wear any uniforms, but they had guns." "What about their cars?" the man asked again. 2 minivans, 4 SUVs, and a SUT. Hearing this, the man went to the window to confirm. When he saw the vehicles parked outside, his eyes lit up and he said, "Tell everyone to pack their things. Someone's come and delivered us cars. We can finally leave this place." The young man was delighted by his order. Although they still had some supplies left, it wasn't enough for everyone. If they wanted to leave, they needed vehicles. After all, this place was far from the city and completely desolate. "Yes, boss." After giving the order, the man quickly went to pack his belongings, unaware that outside, Feng Yun had returned and stored the cars into his space before rejoining the team. Chapter 181, Mutated Animal 1. 15 minutes later, the warehouse's iron door was pushed open, and a group of people came out with smiles on their faces. They thought they were finally able to leave this place, but when they looked across the road, the cars were nowhere to be seen. Everyone was stunned, especially the young man and his boss. The two of them had seen the vehicles just now. How could they suddenly disappear? If those people had come back and driven the cars away, they would have heard something, but they heard nothing. "Boss, you said we have cars and can leave now. Where are the cars?" one of the men asked. "The cars were here," the boss said, feeling confused. Hearing this, another man asked, "Boss, are you sure you didn't see it wrong? There is no car at all." Seeing that his boss was starting to get angry, the young man quickly said, "Brother, there really were cars here. I saw them with my own eyes. They were here 15 minutes ago." "If what you say is true, then where are the cars now?" a man asked unhappily. Noticing their doubts and disbeliefs, the boss said, "If you don't believe me, you can go back inside. Whether there are cars or not, I'm leaving this place today." A middle-aged man frowned when he heard those words and said, "Boss, are you going to leave us here? You said yourself that as long as we followed you, we wouldn't have to worry about food and shelter. But after so many days, we only get a sip of water and a piece of biscuit." The moment the man heard this, a flash of disappointment appeared in his eyes. He stood there, looking at the workers he had tried to save for a moment before he said, "I did say that, and I apologize for my ignorance. I thought the situation wasn't that bad, and as long as we worked together, we could survive this crisis. But after I went out with my brothers, I realized things were worse than I imagined. Supplies are limited, and the risk of dying just to find food is extremely high. We have lost several brothers trying to find food for all of you, but how did you repay that effort and sacrifice?" he asked. Hearing his words, no one responded. They avoided his gaze in silence. After a moment, a woman suddenly spoke up. Boss, you are the owner of this place and you hired us. Isn't it your responsibility to protect your employees? Why are you acting like we owe you something? The young man beside the boss immediately exploded with anger the moment he heard her words. He pointed at her and shouted, "Say that one more time." Unfazed by his anger, the woman retorted, "Did I say anything wrong? What's so hard about going out to find food and water?" "You ungrateful bitch, if it weren't for our boss, your husband would have killed you when he turned into a zombie," the young man said angrily. "After our boss fed and protected you and your children, now you think it's just what he is supposed to do. Aren't you ashamed of yourself for taking other people's kindness for granted like this?" he asked. His outburst sparked a heated argument between him and several others. Seeing his team and the rest of the group arguing, the man finally said, "Enough." Everyone went silent at his words and glared at each other with hatred. He took a deep breath and said, "Since you think it's so easy to find food, then go find it yourself. From today on, my team and I will no longer protect or gather food for you. Whether you survive or not will be up to you." With that, he turned and walked away. His team quickly followed after him, while the rest of the survivors hesitated. After some discussion, they decided to return to the warehouse and wait for government rescue. At the same time, the young man asked, "Boss, where are we going now?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Let's go find that group of people first and see if we can buy some food and water from them." Okay. While the small team was looking for them, the phantom team reached the animal pen's location. The moment they walked closer to the map, they were stunned by the information written there. They thought that the husbandry in this area was only one type of farming. Unexpectedly, this area had poultry farming, cattle farming, pig farming, goat farming, sheep farming, fish farming, apiculture, which is also known as beekeeping, cuniculture, and horse breeding. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai was delighted and said, "Brother Yan, let's go check the animals." Okay, Jin Zuyan agreed readily. The rest of the members didn't have any objections and followed them closely. As they walked, Qin Luzi kept his focus on the surroundings and the map in his mind. 20 minutes later, he suddenly said, "Captain, there is something in the right direction." When they heard his words, they took out their guns and walked in the right direction. This was the area of pig farming. Not long after, they could hear a series of grunting and squealing coming from the pens. Oink oink. As soon as they heard this, everyone was surprised. Xirokai smiled and said, "There is pig." He was so excited that he wanted to rush into the pen, but before he could enter, Qin Luzi stopped him and said, "That pig is not normal." When he heard this, Xirokai was stunned and asked, "Brother Qin, why did you say so?" "The color of the pig inside is yellow," Qin Luzi said with a frown. This was the first time he encountered this color. Color? Xirokai was confused. Qin Luzi nodded and explained, "In my map, ordinary people are represented by a white dot, a zombie is a red dot, and an ability user is a green dot. I don't know what the yellow dot represents." Chapter 182, Mutated Animal 2. After he finished his words, Qin Luzi glanced at Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan. Until now, he still couldn't figure out why they had blue dots instead of green dots, but since there was nothing wrong with them, he didn't say anything. But today, he actually encountered another color, yellow. After thinking for a moment, Jin Zuyan said, "I will go inside and check it. All of you wait here." The members knew how strong their captain was, so when they heard his suggestion, they nodded. Jin Zuyan glanced at Zhao Lijai and asked, "Aitg, do you want to go inside with me?" "Of course." Zhao Lijai had a feeling that the animal had already slowly mutated. The one inside might be a mutated pig, and if she could get it, she could raise it in her space. The moment the two of them entered the pen, they saw several pairs of red eyes staring at them warily. Due to the mutation, the size of the pigs had increased by several folds. Their strength and breeding ability also increased by more than twice. At this moment, there were a total of 7 mutated pigs in front of them. Judging from their sizes, there were 2 male pigs and 5 female pigs. When Zhao Lijai saw them, her eyes lit up and she couldn't hide her excitement. She pulled at Jin Zuyan's hand and said, "Brother Yan, it's a living animal." Jin Zuyan smiled at her and nodded. It's a living animal." After thinking for a moment, he added, "Aitg, I will ask them to check other areas first." Okay. Jin Zuyan went out and said, Zhang Yuan, bring our brothers and check the other areas for survivors and supplies. Aitg and I will take care of the mutated animals. When they heard his words, Qin Luzi asked, Captain, are the animals inside mutated? Yes, it's a mutated animal. We don't know if the meat is edible, so we will kill it first to avoid the hidden danger. After getting confirmation from his captain, Qin Luzi nodded and said, be careful. It turns out the yellow dot on his map means that it's a mutated animal. Now that he already knew what it represented, he could warn his team in advance if they encountered the same situation. After they left, Jin Zuyin entered the pen and saw Zhao Lijai in the middle of a staring contest with the mutated pigs. Seeing this, he chuckled and said, Aitg, let's kill them first before you store them in your space. Both of them knew that the mutated animal was edible. It was just that the meat was hard and tasteless. Hearing his words, Zhao Lijai shook her head and said, Brother Yan, there is no need to bother. I will just store them directly. After all, they will die as soon as they enter my space. Okay, then. Although he agreed, Jin Zuyin still kept his eyes on the situation, fearing that the mutated pigs would harm her. He was ready to become a hero, saving the damsel in distress. Unfortunately, the beautiful scene in his mind was shattered in a matter of seconds. Zhao Lijai raised her hands, and with a wave, 7 massive mutated pigs disappeared instantly. Seeing this, Jin Zuyin was disappointed. Having a powerful girlfriend was not really a good thing for him. It was hard to find an opportunity to show off his strength and handsomeness. Not knowing the small thoughts of a certain person, Zhao Lijai quickly checked the mutated pigs in her space. She was worried that they would be absorbed by her space and turned into wisps of energy instead. At the current oxygen level inside her space, she could raise 80 animals. Therefore, after entering the space, the pigs were not suffocated, only slightly frightened. They let out low grunts and squeals as they observed their surroundings. Since they were alive, Zhao Lijai moved them to the corner of the grassland, far from the house and supplies. Opening the settings panel, she limited the area around the pigs, confining them to a 50m2 area. While she was setting the grassland, she noticed that the oxygen level decreased a little after the animals entered the space. But with the crops, grassland, bushes, and trees continuing to produce more oxygen, the level slowly increased again. She thought for a while and wondered, if the oxygen level could increase even after the animals entered her space, then wouldn't it mean that her previous guess was wrong? She had thought that with the minimal requirement and the oxygen consumption for raising animals, she could only raise at most 80 animals in her space. But if her previous thoughts were wrong and the new conclusion was right, then wouldn't it mean she could raise unlimited animals in her space? When this thought appeared in her mind, she was overjoyed. She would know the truth after she collected more animals. After being moved suddenly, the pigs were frightened. The female pigs gathered together and shivered, while the male pigs let out threatening grunts, ready for battle. They waited and waited, but after a while there was nothing. When they thought that it was a false alarm, 2 huge basins appeared out of nowhere. One basin was filled with water while the other was filled with feed. Outside the space, Jin Zuyin watched his Aitg collect everything in the pen and asked, Aitg, why are you collecting the pig feed? Brother Yan, we might need it in the future. We never know if one day we want to settle down and raise animals. Then these things will be useful, Zhao Lijai said with a smile. Hearing her words, the image of him and her sharing a house and building their small family together flashed in his mind. He could even imagine what their children would look like and was thinking about what name he should give to their children. Chapter 183, A Granny and a Baby, 1. Not knowing that Jin Zuyin's thoughts were wandering too far off to the future, Zhao Lijai took everything inside the pigpen and said, Brother Yan, let's go check another area. Coming back to his senses, Jin Zuyin nodded and replied calmly, okay. While the two of them went to check other farms, Zhang Yuan and the rest of the team were checking the residential area. Due to the remote location of the husbandries, the owner had built lots of houses for the workers and their families. So the residential area covered a vast piece of land and even had a small school, a clinic, and a small shop selling daily necessities. As they walked, Qin Luzi said, be careful, there are lots of zombies inside. Hearing this, the Phantom team members pulled out their guns and nodded. The Wen brothers walked in front while holding metal shields, and the rest followed behind them. The moment they entered the gate, Qin Luzi said, right side. Clang! Wen Kai let out a grunt as his shield blocked a zombie's claw. Crit! The sound of the zombie's sharp nails scratching the shield was harsh and sharp to the ears. The next moment, Wen Kai pushed the zombie back using his shield and stepped aside. Top. Zhang Yuan and Yu Fian raised their guns and shot at the zombies, killing them instantly. Seeing this, Chen Ji and Jiang Lixin were surprised. After they awakened their abilities, Jiang Lixin found out that she had a healing type ability. While it was a rare ability that could save lives, she didn't have any attack power, so she was protected in the middle of the group. As for Chen Ji, even though he survived the awakening process, his internal organs were injured and had not yet fully healed, so he was also protected in the middle of the group. Noticing their expressions, Wen Mo said, "When we are done clearing the zombies, I will make one airgun for each of you." Hearing this, the two of them nodded and said, "Thank you, brother Wen Mo." "Both of you are older than me, just call my name," Wen Mo said with a smile. Chen Ji nodded and said, "Okay." Top. While they chatted, their team had already killed the surrounding zombies. As usual, Shen Jinj burned the corpses while Zyro Kai picked up the crystals. As they walked, Qin Luzi suddenly pointed at one of the houses and said, "There are people inside that house." Hearing this, the team nodded and went to check the house. Inside the house, an old woman was hugging a baby in her arms as she hid inside the wardrobe. She had already seen the people outside and prayed that they wouldn't be able to find her. Unfortunately, no matter how much she prayed, the group still entered her house. They are inside the cabinet. The moment the old woman heard this, she clenched the knife in her hand and was ready to strike at the people outside. Not knowing that the person inside was ready to attack them, Wen Kai opened the cabinet door. The next moment, he saw a knife aimed at his head. Clang! Seeing this, he raised his shield and blocked the attack. Clang, clang, clang. "Ah, die!" the old woman shouted as she swung her knife repeatedly. When Zhang Yuan saw that the one attacking them was an old woman, he said, "Granny, please calm down, we are not bad people." Hearing this, the old woman stopped swinging her knife, but she still glared and said, "Liar, they also said they weren't bad people, but they used my son as bait and humiliated my daughter-in-law until she died." From her words, the Phantom team members could guess what had happened to the old woman and her family. "Granny, we are not in the same group as those people. If you don't believe us, we will leave," Zhang Yuan said. Just after he said this, the baby hidden behind the old woman suddenly woke up and let out a weak cry, "Wah." Due to malnutrition, the baby's cry was not loud. After 2 weak cries, the baby stopped and sucked on his little fingers with his eyes closed. After the apocalypse, this was the first time they had seen a baby. Everyone's gaze was locked on the small bundle. Seeing this, the old woman quickly hugged her grandson tighter and pointed the knife at them while saying, "If you dare come closer, I will fight you to death." At this moment, they didn't know what to do. If they left the old woman and the baby here, they would surely die. If they brought them along, the baby's cry could attract zombies. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Yuan finally said, "Granny, we won't take the baby away. It's not safe here, and if you stay too long without food or water, you will die from starvation or dehydration. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about the baby. Without food, the baby won't survive. Come with us, and we will send you to a safe place." The old woman looked at him, weighing the pros and cons. She didn't fear death, but was unwilling to die and take away her grandson's chance to grow up and see the world. After a while, she finally lowered her knife and said, "I will go with you." When they heard this, they let out a sigh of relief. After the old woman came out of the cabinet, they finally saw the crisscross wounds on her wrist and the bloodstains on the baby's collar. Seeing this, they looked at the old woman with more respect. To ensure the baby's survival, she had used her own blood to feed him. Zyro Kai checked his space and found several boxes of oatmeal cereal in the corner. He took out a box and handed it to the old woman. Chapter 184, A Granny and a Baby, 2. "Granny, you can feed the baby with this first. After we leave this place, we will cook some porridge for him," Zyro Kai said. The old woman was stunned when she saw the oatmeal. She accepted it and knelt down in front of them, saying, "Thank you, benefactor, thank you." Everyone was shocked by her gesture. Zyro Kai quickly helped her up and said, "Granny, please stand up." The old woman no longer resisted them and quickly fed the oatmeal to the baby. "Granny, how old is the baby?" Zyro Kai asked. "My grandson is 4 months old," the old woman replied while feeding him. They looked at the thin baby, who looked more like a 2-month-old, and sighed. The baby was malnourished and starving. No wonder he looked like that. After feeding him, Zyrokai took out the corn water he had stored earlier and handed it to the old woman. "Granny, this is corn water. You can give it to your grandson and you should drink some too," he said. When the old woman heard this, her eyes lit up. For people her age, they knew corn water had many health benefits and could nourish the body. This was good stuff. "Thank you, benefactor." Zyrokai was embarrassed to be called a benefactor, so he said, "Granny, my name is Zyrokai. You can just call me by name." "Okay, Zyrokai," the old woman agreed. After feeding the corn water to her grandson, she took a sip. The corn water was delicious and refreshing. She took several more sips and felt her energy slowly returning. Worried that she wouldn't have food later for her grandson, she was reluctant to drink more and saved the rest for him. "Granny, just drink more. We still have water and food," Zyrokai said and handed her a pack of compressed biscuits. Under his urging, the old woman finished the biscuits and corn water. After she regained her energy, Zhang Yuan said, "Let's go." When they came out, Jiang Lixin noticed the baby's condition and said, "Vice Captain, can I take a look at the baby?" Hearing her words, the old woman hugged her grandson closer and said, "My grandson is fine." "Your grandson has some rash and shortness of breath. His face is flushed and he is shivering. He might have a fever," Jiang Lixin said. Seeing the old woman still unwilling to let her check, she added, "I'm a doctor. I can help you check the baby's condition." "Granny, she is one of us," Zyrokai said. After hearing his words, the old woman finally nodded. Jiang Lixin reached out and checked the baby's pulse and body. 5 minutes later, she said, "Your grandson has a fever. We don't have any medicine or tools, so we can only lower his temperature manually." Just after she said this, Feng Yun took out a pack of fever medicine for Barbies and a pack of compresses from his space. He handed them to her and said, "Here." Jiang Lixin took the medicine, read the instructions, and fed the syrup to the baby. Then, she placed the compresses on the baby's forehead and armpits to lower his body temperature. When she was done, she took off her husband's shirt and used it to cover the baby. Left with only a t-shirt, Chen Ji glanced at his wife speechlessly. "Give the baby more water during this period," she reminded the old woman. After they finished treating the baby, they continued clearing the zombies while checking the supplies and looking for survivors. Some houses still had uncontaminated supplies, and Zyrokai took everything, including the gas cylinder and stove. At the same time, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan were facing a group of people in the poultry farming area. The two of them observed the group and noticed that some had deformed body parts. One of them had a huge arm, while another had a huge leg. These deformed body parts were signs of strength-type ability users. Unlike elemental-type ability users, the basic sense-type users were easier to recognize due to the physical changes in their bodies. For example, the increase in the strength of strength-type ability users came from their muscles, bones, and joints mutating after being affected by the zombie virus. As for vision-type ability users, the changes were found in their pupils. Except for strength-type users, the other basic abilities caused minimal changes to the body. So after a moment of observation, they knew this group was made up of ability users. 4 of them were strength-type ability users, but only one seemed experienced. The other 3 might have only recently awakened their abilities. As for the rest, they need to observe more to find out their abilities. After a moment, Jin Zuyan asked, "What do you want?" The man with the biggest arm pointed at Zhao Lijai and said, "You came into our territory and need to pay the price. Leave that woman and everything you have behind, and you can walk away with your life. Otherwise, we will kill you." When he heard the man's words, Jin Zuyan's eyes turned cold. It was one thing to rob him since robbery was common in the apocalypse, but it was an entirely different matter if they dared to covet his Aitg. Before anyone could react, he flicked his fingers, and a small fireball the size of a bean flew toward the man at high speed. No one noticed the small black flame except Zhao Lijai, who stood beside him. When she saw his attack, she pulled out her dagger, ready for battle. Zog! In the blink of an eye, the man suddenly screamed as the black flame engulfed his fingers, burning them to ashes. Seeing his fingers disappear so suddenly, everyone was stunned. Just as they thought the flame would reduce him to a pile of ashes, Jin Zuyan flicked his finger and retrieved the black flame. He played with the wisp of fire floating above his palm and said with a smile, If you dare to point your finger again, it won't be just your fingers that turn to ashes. Chapter 185, No Different from Livestocks. The moment they heard Jin Zuyin's voice and saw his smile, a chill ran down their spines. No matter how gentle his smile appeared, they only felt fear and terror when they faced him. Kneeling on the ground, the big-armed man clutched his hand as blood flowed from the wound to the ground. Since his fingers were completely burned, it was impossible to reattach them. No matter how strong he had been, without fingers, he could no longer form a proper fist or hold a weapon, rendering him useless. He looked at Jin Zuyin with hatred, but he didn't dare act recklessly. With just one move, Jin Zuyin had crippled his power. From that alone, he knew it was impossible for them to defeat him. Since he couldn't use force, he could only rely on schemes. After a moment, he raised his head and said, "Brother, please spare us. We only wanted to survive and didn't have any bad intentions." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin chuckled and said, "Didn't have any bad intentions, yet you dared to covet my girlfriend." The moment he finished his words, something flew toward the man's left eye. "Stab!" "Arg!" the man screamed and rolled on the ground. No one knew what had just happened and could only take several steps back, trying to distance themselves from him. At this point, the man no longer had any intention of scheming against Jin Zuyin. He only hoped for a quick death. The pain of losing both his fingers and an eye was too much to bear. Watching the man twitching on the ground in agony, Jin Zuyin said with a smile, "As you said, one needs to pay the price. Since you dared to stare at my girlfriend with that disgusting gaze, then you will pay for your crime with one of your eyes." Only after hearing his words did everyone realize he was the one who had attacked their boss. If before they still held out hope that their boss might outsmart him, now they only wished to become invisible so as not become his next target. While Jin Zuyin used a metal bullet to destroy the man's eye, Zhao Lijai watched without flinching. People like him only dared to bully the weak. Although such people wouldn't survive long in the apocalypse, the crimes they committed in that short time were unforgivable. She looked at the group and noticed there wasn't a single woman among them. It seemed they were no different from the beasts at the factory. 5 minutes later, the man died from the pain, and Jin Zuyin burned his corpse with his flame. When he was done, he looked at the group and said, "Lead the way to your base." After witnessing how he killed their boss, no one dared go against him. They quickly nodded and led him and Zhao Lijai to the warehouse. When they opened the gate, Zhao Lijai frowned. Amid the rancid stench in the air, she could smell body odor, sourness, and musky, metallic stench. As they entered the warehouse, her eyes turned cold when she saw a group of women tied to pillars with torn clothes, while the children and elderly were locked up in a cage. Jin Zuyin also saw the situation but remained as calm as ever. His expression didn't change in the slightest as he looked at the women, children, and elderly being treated like animals. He had experienced decades as a zombie in his past life and had long since lost any sense of human morality. To him, these people were no different from livestock. He only saw Aitg and his team members as human. As for everyone else, he simply didn't care. If not for his worries that Aitg would loathe or fear him, he wouldn't have bothered to save the survivors at all. As they walked, everyone inside looked at them with various gazes. The children and elderly gazed pleadingly, while the women looked at them with dull, lifeless eyes. Looking at them, Zhao Lijai recalled her own past and said, "Release them." When the men heard this, one of them gathered his courage and said, "Sister, we can't release them. Those people are very important for us to get supplies. If we release them, no one will lure the zom. Cough. Before the man could finish his words, his neck had been slashed. The next moment, he fell to the ground while clutching his bleeding neck. In less than 2 minutes, he breathed his last and died with his eyes open. Hot, red blood dripped from the tip of Zhao Lijai's dagger as she looked at the group of men and repeated her words coldly, "Release them." This time, no one dared voice any objection. They quickly moved to open the cage and untie the women. As soon as they were released, the children and elderly rushed to the women, covering their wounded bodies with their clothes. They hugged them and cried. The men looked at them with disgust and impatience, but when their gazes shifted to Zhao Lijai, only fear remained. Ignoring them, Zhao Lijai walked up to the group of women and asked, "Do you want to kill them?" At first, the women didn't react, even after being released, but when they heard her words, light slowly returned to their eyes and tears began to fall. "I want to kill them," one of them said weakly. Despite her hoarse, soft voice, the hatred in it was unmistakable. Zhao Lijai nodded, placed her dagger on the ground in front of the woman and said, "I will lend you my dagger. You can kill them yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned and walked back to Jin Zuyan, waiting silently. The woman stared at the cold dagger on the ground in a daze. Suddenly, she pushed away the old woman and man who were holding her and picked it up. She then dragged her wounded body and walked to the group of men slowly. Chapter 186, Untying the Knot. When they saw this, the old woman covered her mouth and cried, while the old man reached out to stop her. But after a moment, he clenched his fists and lowered his head, crying silently. Their grandson had been taken by those people. Their son-in-law had been used as bait to lure away zombies. They didn't know if he was still alive or already dead. Now that there was a chance, they had no reason to stop their daughter from seeking revenge for her husband and son. When the group of men saw her approaching with the dagger, they glanced at Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan. Seeing that neither of them had any intention of helping the woman, their expressions changed. One of the men stepped forward and said, "Bitch, if you know what's good for you, put down your weapon. If you follow me obediently, you won't have to worry about food anymore. I promise not to share you with my brothers and keep you for myself." After he spoke, the men burst out laughing. One of them added, "Brother, you can't do that. She is the most beautiful in the group and you want to keep her for yourself. Aren't you being too selfish?" The man looked at him and asked, "Didn't I let you taste her yesterday?" Hearing this, they all looked at the woman with lust in their eyes. They had all taken turns with her, and among the group of women, she was the best. That was why she was used the most, and now bore bruises and wounds all over her body. Standing in the distance, Jin Zuyan leaned closer to Zhao Lijai and asked, "Aitg, won't you help her?" Zhao Lijai shook her head and said, "Only by untying the knot with her own hands will she be able to move forward." Even though she said that, her attention never left the woman. Since she intended to save her, she wouldn't allow those men to harm her. The woman hated those men to her bones, but her face remained expressionless as she approached the one who had spoken. She wore only a scrap of clothing draped over her body, so from up close, the man could clearly see her bare figure. Staring at her perky breasts, he licked his lips and said, "Serve me well, and I will give you enough food for your parents and yourself." The woman raised her eyes to look at him and smiled. When they saw her smile, they thought she had finally given in. The men laughed proudly. To make a woman obedient, she just needed to be beaten and broken. Before they could finish laughing, the woman narrowed her eyes and swung her hand. "Stab! Aitg!" The man let out a piercing scream as pain exploded from his lower body. Feeling the warm, sticky liquid cover her hand, madness flashed in the woman's eyes. She pushed the dagger in deeper and twisted it slowly as she said, "Beast, you deserve to die." After she finished her words, she pulled the dagger back and stabbed his lower body again and again, turning it into minced meat. "Cough, you!" The man choked up mouthfuls of blood before collapsing, his eyes wide open in disbelief and unwillingness as he breathed his last. Everyone was stunned at the sudden situation. It took the other men a moment to react, but by the time they did, she had already stabbed another one nearby. Seeing this, the rest of them exploded in anger and rushed toward her, full of murderous intent. Facing them, the woman showed no fear. She was ready to die. She had already lost her son and husband. The only thing keeping her alive now was her desire for revenge, so when one of the men punched her in the stomach, she didn't even try to dodge. "Duag! Cough!" She felt her organs shift from the blow. The pain was unbearable and cold sweat broke out all over her body. But compared to the pain in her heart, her physical suffering was nothing. Gritting her teeth, she raised her hand and stabbed the man's arm. "Arg!" he screamed as she dragged the dagger downward. A long, deep gash appeared on his arm. His muscles were torn open and his bone was visible. It was clear how much strength she had put behind this attack. "Bitch, you are looking for death." The man reached to strangle her, but before his hand could touch her throat, the dagger had already pierced his throat. Splash! Blood spurted from his neck as he collapsed to the ground while coughing blood violently. Blood splattered across the woman's face and body, but she didn't flinch or scream. "Bitch, go die." Just after she had killed another of them, another man swung a boning knife at her back. "No!" the elderly couple screamed when they saw this. Crack! Just when everyone thought the woman would be killed, a water blade flew at a fast speed and severed the man's arm clean off. My arm." The woman felt a cold gust of wind rush past her. Turning around, she saw the man kneeling and groaning in pain. Without hesitation, she raised the dagger and stabbed him in the nape. As time passed and the more she killed, her movements became more ruthless as her entire body radiated killing intent. With Zhao Lijai's covert support, she was able to fight the group of men. Nearly an hour later, she stood surrounded by mutilated corpses. Her body was drenched in blood, and the ground beneath her feet was soaked red. She was breathing heavily, gasping for air. Turning around, she looked at Zhao Lijai and said softly with teary eyes, "Thank you." As soon as she spoke, the dagger slipped from her hand, and she collapsed to the ground with a thud. Seeing this, her parents rushed over to check on her. When they realized she was still breathing, they looked around and cried out, "Please save our daughter." Chapter 187, Two Choices. The old woman kowtowed again and again, pleading, "I beg you anyone, please save my daughter." Dongs, dongs, dong. The sound of her forehead striking the ground echoed through the warehouse, but no one stepped forward. Even though the woman had saved them by killing the group of men, no one was willing to help. One reason was that they had no ability to offer real help. The other reason was their fear of Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan. They could see that the couple was different from the others. They could kill without hesitation. What if they wanted to kill the woman too, and they helped her? Wouldn't they just be inviting disaster onto themselves? When the old couple thought they would lose their daughter, they saw the young couple walk over. She looked at them warily but also hopefully. "Comrade, please, save my daughter," the old woman pleaded as she kowtowed to them. Zhao Lijai didn't stop her, but reached out to check on the old woman's daughter. Even without any medical knowledge, she knew the woman's condition was not promising. She had suffered abuse and her wounds were infected. Some were already festering, and she also had a high fever. Due to how those men treated the women, the chance of them being infected by the zombie virus was very high, as the infection could be caused by their wounds coming into contact with zombie blood or rotten flesh. After checking her for a moment, Zhao Lijai took a small bottle of pond water and a strip of fever medicine from her pocket and fed them to the woman. When she was done, she said, "Take off her clothes." Hearing this, the old couple was surprised and unwilling to follow her instructions. Their daughter had already been humiliated. They didn't want to expose her bare body to the public eye again. While they were hesitating, Jin Zuyan said, "Aitg, you treat her. I will take care of the bodies." Zhao Lijai wasn't so petty as to mind him seeing another woman's body, as she has seen Pei Yijan's body before, but when she heard his words, she felt more comfortable and agreed readily. "Okay." Unbeknownst to her, even with so many barely dressed women around, Jin Zuyan didn't spare them a glance. From the moment they entered the warehouse, his gaze had been focused on his Aitg. After all, he had no interest in copulating with livestock, so he wouldn't have any desire for them. After he walked away, Zhao Lijai said, "If you keep hesitating, I won't be able to save your daughter's life." Upon hearing her words, the old couple finally relented. The old woman undressed her daughter and asked, "Comrade, can my daughter be saved?" "That will depend on her." After saying that, she took out a bar of soap and reached out to touch the woman's skin. As her palm glided over her bare body, water began to flow from her hand. Everyone was surprised to see water pouring from her palm, which she used to clean the woman's body. What they didn't know was that the water came from the pond inside her space. The pond water had mild healing properties. It could help the woman fight against the zombie virus in case she was infected and increase her chances of survival. After cleaning away the blood and filth, she used the soap to wash every nook and cranny of the woman's body. Using the soap helped remove bacteria and viruses, reducing the risk of complications. Once she finished, she rinsed the soap with more pond water, then took out a bottle of wound medicine from her pocket. This time she handed it to the old woman and said, "Apply this medicine to her wounds. Don't miss any part, especially her lower body." The old woman nodded as she accepted the medicine. While she was applying the medicine, Zhao Lijai went to check on the other survivors. Before approaching the women, she visited the children and the elderly. Standing before them, she asked, "Do you want to survive?" It took them a moment, but eventually they nodded. Seeing this, she continued, "If you want to survive, then you have to get stronger and fight for your life. Go find a clean container, I will give you water." The moment they heard this, a glimmer of hope returned to their eyes. Since the children were too weak, the elderly were the ones who went out to find containers. In less than 10 minutes, they returned with various items, bottles, basins, and even broken glasses. Zhao Lijai conjured a water ball and said, "Clean the containers first." Hearing this, everyone washed the containers one after another. Once cleaned, she filled each with pond water. She let them drink until they were satisfied, then refilled their containers for later. When she was done, she finally approached the group of women. Looking at them, she threw her dagger to the ground and said, "You have two choices now. Either give up and kill yourselves, or stand up and fight." The women raised their heads to look at her. Meeting their eyes, Zhao Lijai could see that most of them had lost the will to live. She didn't try to persuade them, as no one could help them except themselves. If they couldn't overcome this hurdle, then death would be a relief, better than living a nightmare. After a while, one woman suddenly crawled toward the dagger and, without hesitation, sliced her own throat. Before breathing her last, she looked at Zhao Lijai with gratitude. Everyone was stunned by this, but before long, another woman picked up the dagger and stabbed herself in the heart. She smiled as she closed her eyes, her expression peaceful, as if she had finally escaped a nightmare. Watching this, Zhao Lijai remained calm. Her expression didn't change, and there was no ripple in her eyes. She didn't even pity them as they took their own lives in front of her. Chapter 188, Rare Kindness. Everyone was terrified as they watched the women kill themselves one after another. 20 minutes later, out of more than 30 women, only 2 remained. Zhao Lijai looked at them and asked, "What about you two?" One of the women gritted her teeth and clenched her fists as she said hoarsely, "I refuse to die before I kill that pair of dog man and bitch. Even if I end up in hell, I will definitely take their lives with my own hands." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai nodded and walked toward her. She squatted in front of her, reached out her hand, and said nothing. The young woman stared at her in a daze for a moment, before she reached out and took her hand. As she grabbed her hand, Zhao Lijai pulled her up and said, "Until you are strong enough, I will teach you how to kill. Whether it's zombies or humans, you have to become strong to protect yourself." The young woman nodded, and determination flashed in her eyes. Zhao Lijai turned to the other woman and asked, "How about you?" The woman pushed herself up and said with a weary smile, "Sister, I'm afraid of pain and even more afraid of death. Even if living is painful, I still want to keep living." Good. Since the two of them had made their decisions, Zhao Lijai brought them to a corner, filled an empty drum with her pond water, and gave them a bar of soap so they could clean themselves. While they were washing up, she went to find something to cover their bodies. 20 minutes later, they finished washing. Zhao Lijai handed them 2 pieces of fabric she had found and said, "Use this for now. When we join the team, we will find proper clothes for you." Accepting the fabric, the two of them said, "Thank you, sister." Zhao Lijai gave them a bottle of water and some medicine for fever, inflammation, and wounds. "Take care of your injuries and drink the medicine." After she finished tending to them, Jin Zuyan walked over and said, "Aitg, I have cleaned up the bodies. We should go out and look for the animals first." Zhao Lijai hadn't forgotten their goal and replied, "Okay." Before leaving, she took out all the food she and Jin Zuyan had carried in their pockets and said, "Rest and recover your strength. When my team comes back, we will leave this place." Hearing this, the elderly and the children looked at her, and one of them asked, "Comrade, can you take us with you too?" Zhao Lijai thought for a moment and said, "It's not impossible for me to take everyone with me, but you have to listen to my instructions and follow my rules. When we reach a survivor camp, we will part ways." Everyone was deeply grateful for her kindness and quickly agreed. When they stepped out of the warehouse, Jin Zuyan looked at her and asked, "Aitg, why did you suddenly help them?" Zhao Lijai let out a sigh and replied, "Brother Yan, in the past, I was also used as bait, so I understand their plight. Helping them wasn't out of kindness, it was selfishness. I wanted to free myself from that dark memory. If back then someone had pulled me out of that place, maybe I wouldn't have been deceived, trusted the wrong person, and died so tragically," she added softly. Hearing this, Jin Zuyan felt a sharp pain in his chest. If only he had found her earlier, perhaps she could have lived more comfortably. But there were no what-ifs in this world. What had happened couldn't be changed. All he could do now was protect her in this life and eliminate every danger in front of them. The two of them went to the building where the chickens were raised. From afar, they could hear the clucking of the chickens. "Brother Yan, we are lucky. Although most of the animals are dead, we can still get some mutated ones," Zhao Lijai said excitedly. Jin Zuyan saw that she was no longer in a bad mood and smiled. He reached out to intertwine their fingers and replied, let's check the animals. They entered the building and saw a total of 20 chickens inside, 3 roosters and 17 hens. Unlike the fully mutated animals from her previous life, the chickens in front of her still retained their original characteristics. Aside from their size, which was now as big as ostriches and shinier feathers than normal chickens, everything else was the same. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai was delighted. With their size, just one chicken would be enough to feed their whole team. She quickly stored them in her space and looked around. She collected all of the chicken feed in the building and even found a pile of chicken eggs at the corner. Picking up an egg, she needed both hands to hold it. It was as big as an ostrich egg. "Brother Yan, look at the size of this egg. We only need one to make a big pot of egg porridge later," she said with a wide grin. Jin Zuyan nodded and smiled at her. As long as she was happy, he was happy too. The two of them gathered everything from the building before checking another area. 2 hours later, they finally returned to the warehouse on the chicken farm and saw Phantom team members walking over from a distance. Following them was a group of survivors. Yu Feiyan had good eyesight and spotted them. He waved his hand and greeted them, "Captain, sister-in-law." As they regrouped, Zhang Yuan reported, "Captain, these are the survivors we found in the residential and other areas." Jin Zuyan looked over and noticed that most of the survivors were either children, the elderly, or women. There were only a few teenage boys among them, but no adult men at all. Seeing this, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "There are no male survivors at all?" Chapter 189, Exchanging Supplies, 1. When they heard Jin Zuyan's words, one of the survivors raised her hand and said, "See, comrade, our brothers, husbands, and fathers were taken away by a group of men." After she said that, a young boy nodded and added, "They weren't from our farm and came suddenly. They not only robbed us, but they also took away my sister and brother-in-law." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai asked, "Besides that group, was there anyone else?" The moment she asked this, the Phantom team members understood she was referring to the group they had seen hiding near the entrance of the farm. The young boy shook his head and replied, "I don't know." After thinking for a moment, he added, "But the farm's owner gathered everyone before to look for a safer place, before that group of men came. My sister and brother-in-law said it was safer to stay home and wait for the rescue team, so we didn't go with them." Zhao Lijai looked at the survivors and said, "Rather than waiting for the government to send people to rescue you, it's better to rely on yourselves." "Sister, what do you mean by that?" the young boy asked. "Our current situation isn't just happening in this area, it's a global apocalypse," Zhao Lijai replied. When everyone heard her words, they were shocked and began murmuring in panic. They had always thought this was a temporary crisis, and that they would return to their previous lives once the government arrived to rescue them. But if this situation were global, what should they do then? Zhao Lijai waited a moment before continuing. "Those monsters are zombies and they act purely on instinct. They are sensitive to sound and scent, so if you get close to them or make a loud noise, they will detect you immediately. When ordinary people are wounded by zombies, even just a small cut, they will be infected. Aside from that, there is a chance of infection through digestion, such as contaminated food or water. Once you are infected, the mortality rate is as high as 99%. As she finished speaking, the survivors' faces turned pale. Most of them had already experienced the horror of being nearly killed by their loved ones. Some had even been forced to kill family members who had turned into zombies. After a long silence, one of them asked, "Comrade, is there any chance of survival after infection?" Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "If your immunity is strong, you might survive, but the chance is only 1%. And if you do survive, there is a 0.01% chance you will awaken an ability." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a ball of water suddenly appeared out of thin air, floating above her hand. When they saw this, their eyes widened in amazement. Some, parched and weak, couldn't help but lick their chapped lips as their gazes were glued to the ball of water. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan said, "Xirokai, give them some water." At his command, Xirokai nodded and took out several boxes of bottled water from his space, distributing one to each person. As for food, they would wait for their captain's decision. "Let's go to the warehouse first," Jin Zuyan said. They followed him into the warehouse on the chicken farm. As soon as they entered, they wrinkled their noses at the strange smell lingering in the air. Seeing that they had finally returned, the survivors already inside breathed a sigh of relief. They had waited for hours without knowing what had happened to the young couple, but fortunately, they came back alive. The Phantom team members weren't surprised by the survivors' condition. After seeing so many people in similar states, they had become somewhat numb. Even so, their eyes darkened when they saw the three women's condition. They also noticed the black ashes on the ground and understood that their captain must have killed something or someone. Zhao Lijai walked over to Xirokai and asked, "Xirokai, do you have women's clothes?" Hearing this, Xirokai nodded and replied, "Sister-in-law, I collected some at the factory before. How many sets do you want?" "Give me 3 sets of t-shirts and pants. Also, do you have women's underwear?" she asked. At first, Xirokai nodded, but when he heard the second part of her sentence, his eyes widened and a blush crept onto his cheeks. He opened and closed his mouth several times before replying in a low voice, "Sister-in-law, I'm not a pervert. How could I have women's underwear?" Zhao Lijai glanced at Jin Zuyan. He had given her several pairs of underwear before. Did that mean he was a pervert? Noticing her look, Jin Zuyan smiled and replied calmly, "Zhai, I'm different. I'm your man. It's only natural for me to prepare things for you." The moment they heard his words, the Phantom team members looked at him speechlessly. Only their captain could say something like that with such confidence. His skin was indeed thick. Zhao Lijai didn't want to continue the topic, so she turned to Xirokai and said, "Then just give me the clothes." Xirokai quickly handed her the clothes and asked, "Sister-in-law, do you need anything else?" Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Give the survivors some food. When we find a survivor camp, we will let them stay there and part ways." "Understood," Xirokai replied and left to carry out the task. Holding the clothes, Zhao Lijai discreetly took out 3 sets of women's underwear from her space, concealing them beneath the clothes so no one would notice. Standing in front of the elderly couple, she said, "Here, help your daughter get dressed." The old couple accepted the clothes and bowed to her. "Thank you, benefactor. I'm not a good person and I'm not your benefactor, so don't call me that." After saying that, she walked away and handed the clothes to the other women. Not long after, they heard a series of footsteps outside. With Qin Luzi and Shen Jinj standing guard outside, no one could approach unnoticed, so they didn't panic and continued with their own task. Chapter 190, Exchanging Supplies 2. Qin Luzi looked at the newcomers and checked his map. Seeing that all of them were ability users, he stepped forward and said, "This place is taken. You can go somewhere else." A young man among the group took a step closer and said, "Brother, this is the owner of the place, Boss Lin." "So?" Qin Luzi asked, raising an eyebrow. Boss Lin noticed their auras and physiques were different from ordinary people and said, "Brother, I just want to ask if you have any food or water. If so, can we buy some from you?" Hearing that they came to buy supplies, Qin Luzi turned to Shen Jinj and said, "Jinj, go inform the captain." "Okay." After Shen Jinj left, Qin Luzi said, "You can wait here." Boss Lin nodded and subtly signaled his team members with his eyes. They had been ordinary people before the apocalypse. Even after awakening their abilities, they still didn't dare to kill people. If they could avoid conflict and resolve things peacefully, that would be best. So after seeing their boss's signal, none of them dared to act recklessly and waited patiently. Less than 10 minutes later, Shen Jinj returned with a tall, handsome man. When they saw him, they knew that he must be the captain. "Captain, these people want to buy our supplies," Qin Luzi said. Jin Zuyan looked at them and asked, "You want to buy my team's supplies?" Boss Lin nodded and said, "Brother, we are willing to pay you triple the market price." Hearing this, Shen Jinj replied, "Do you think we want your money in the current situation?" Boss Lin knew that his words were foolish and asked, "Then, what do you want in exchange for the food?" "Crystal cores," Jin Zuyan replied. When they heard his words, Boss Lin and his group looked at each other for a while before he took out a small pouch from his backpack. Opening the small pouch, he showed the contents to them and asked, "Brother, is this what you want?" Shen Jinj looked at the items inside and replied with a nod, "Yes." Receiving their confirmation, Boss Lin and his team were delighted. They found these crystals after they killed the zombies. Although they didn't know the function, they kept the crystals just in case. They never expected that these crystals were valuable and could be exchanged for food. If they had known, they would have gone out and killed more zombies. "Brother, with this amount of crystals, how much food can we get?" Boss Lin asked. Jin Zuyan thought for a moment and said, I have to ask my girlfriend first. After leaving those words, he turned and went inside, leaving Boss Lin and his group dumbfounded. They thought that the captain would be able to make the decision. Unexpectedly, even if he held a high position, he still had to listen to his girlfriend. They exchanged glances and decided that women were indeed a dangerous race. If they want to have a good life in this chaotic period, they should stay away from women. Not long after, Jin Zuyin returned with Zhao Lijai. When Zhao Lijai saw the group of men outside, surprise flashed in her eyes, and memories of her past life flashed in her mind. The man standing in the front was her ex-captain. She never expected to meet him so early in this life. She thought that she would only be able to meet him if she went to Jinwu City. Noticing that his Aitg was staring at the middle-aged man without blinking, Jin Zuyin frowned and squeezed her hand. Coming back to her senses, Zhao Lijai turned to look at him and saw him staring at her. He was unhappy. She smiled and leaned closer to whisper, "Brother Yan, that person was my captain in the previous life." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin frowned and replied, "Wasn't your captain a young man? I remember he treated you quite well, and he was also very good-looking." Noticing his sour tone, Zhao Lijai explained, "That person was my vice-captain. After my captain sacrificed his life to save me from a mutated animal, he took over the team. Since everyone blamed me, I was ostracized by my members, so my vice-captain treated me well because he pitied me. We didn't have any romantic relationship at all." After he heard this, Jin Zuyin's expression improved, and he reminded her, "In this life he doesn't know you, so you should be careful with your behavior." Zhao Lijai smiled and replied, "I know." When they finished whispering, they finally walked out. Seeing them coming, Boss Lin smiled and asked, "Comrade, how is it? Have you discussed it with your girlfriend?" Zhao Lijai was used to Jin Zuyin introducing her as his girlfriend, so she didn't fuss over the title. Instead, she looked at her captain and said, "Comrade, I heard that you are the owner of this husbandry." Boss Lin nodded and replied with a sigh, "I am. Unfortunately, the animals died from disease, and there is nothing left." "Comrade, since you are the owner of this place, you can use 1 crystal to exchange for 10 kilograms of rice," Zhao Lijai said. The moment she said this, everyone was stunned, including Qin Luzi and Shen Jinj. They knew that the crystal was valuable, but it wouldn't be able to be exchanged for so much food. Although they had their doubts, the two of them didn't say a word. Since their captain tacitly agreed with their sister-in-law's words, they only needed to trust her. "Comrade, are you sure we can exchange 10 kilograms of rice for 1 crystal?" the young man beside Boss Lin asked. Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "If you want to exchange for water, you can get 5 gallons of water for 1 crystal." This time, Boss Lin and his team were so happy that they wanted to dance. Compared to food, water was harder to find. Mineral water was limited, and the water sources were contaminated.